The moment my daughter-in-law called me the maid in the middle of Hawthorne Market, I did not correct her, because the credit card in her hand had my name on it. I was standing beside the checkout lane with 2 paper bags of groceries pressed against my hip, the kind with handles that cut into your fingers when the apples roll to one side. The store was busy for a Saturday morning in Naperville, full of carts squeaking over polished tile, bakery cases glowing with fresh cinnamon rolls, and families comparing prices on Thanksgiving turkeys even though November was still a few weeks away. I had come there for pot roast, green beans, Yukon Gold potatoes, and the little apple cider donuts my son Michael used to love when he was 10 years old and still believed I could fix anything by warming milk on the stove. Brittany had come for imported cheese, flowers I was apparently buying, and the pleasure of reminding me where she thought I belonged. The young clerk, a red-haired girl with a name tag that said Mia, had smiled at me and said, "Would you like these in a separate bag, ma'am?" Before I could answer, Brittany laughed softly, the way women like her laugh when they want cruelty to sound like good manners. "Oh, don't worry about her," she told the clerk. "That old woman is the maid, don't talk to her like she's family." The scanner beeped once. Then again. Then stopped. Mia's hand froze over a carton of strawberries. The man behind us shifted his weight. Somewhere near the deli counter, a child asked for a cookie, and his mother whispered for him to wait. I looked at Brittany first. Perfect beige coat. Perfect blonde waves. Perfect smile, thin as a paper cut. Then I looked at the card between her manicured fingers. My card. The one I had given Michael for emergencies after his father died, back when I still believed helping your child was different from being used by him. Brittany tapped it against the payment terminal like she was tapping a servant's shoulder. "Eleanor gets confused sometimes," she added, lowering her voice but not enough. "She likes to feel included." I had lived 68 years by then. I had buried a husband, raised a son, kept a business. Alive through 2 recessions, and learned how to smile at customers who complained about things that were never my fault. I knew the difference between a mistake and a performance. This was not a mistake. This was a scene Brittany had been rehearsing in smaller ways for years. I could feel every eye pretending not to look at me. That was the worst part. Not the word maid. There is dignity in honest work. My own mother cleaned hotel rooms in Peoria for 12 years and came home with swollen feet and a spine straighter than most women in church. No, what hurt was the way Brittany used the word to erase me. Not Michael's mother. Not Robert Whittaker's widow. Not Grace's grandmother. Not the woman who had paid the property taxes on the lake house, covered Michael's business loan when he was too proud to ask the bank twice, and stocked Brittany's refrigerator after her first failed attempt at hosting Christmas dinner. Just the maid. Someone useful, but not equal. Present, but not acknowledged. Allowed to carry the bags, but not allowed to have a name. Mia's cheeks turned pink. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, though I could tell she did not know which one of us she was apologizing to. Brittany gave a bright little sigh. "Just ring it up, please. We're in a hurry." We. I noticed that word too. We were in a hurry. We were having people over. We needed the flowers. But when it came to respect, there was no we. Only me, standing beside a cart filled with food I had chosen for a family dinner I was beginning to suspect I had not really been invited to. The total appeared on the screen, $342.19. Brittany did not blink. Why would she? Generosity is easy when the bill belongs to someone else. She inserted my card, and the machine asked for a zip code. She hesitated. Just a second. Barely long enough for most people to notice. But I noticed. I had been noticing things for a long time, even when I pretended not to. 60540, I said gently. Brittany's eyes flicked toward me, sharp and annoyed. Mia entered the amount of the cashback question, then looked at me again as if she wanted to say something. I saved her the trouble. I set the Grocery bags down, one at a time, carefully, because heavy things deserve to be placed with care before you walk away from them. Then I reached into my purse and took out my own wallet. Brittany frowned. "Eleanor, what are you doing?" I smiled. Not because it did not hurt. Not because I had forgiven her. I smiled because at that exact moment, while the receipt was printing and my name was appearing in black ink under a purchase she had made for herself, I finally understood the shape of the game. She had called me the maid while paying with my card. And that was the moment I stopped being generous. That morning had started with the kind of hope that looks foolish only after someone crushes it. I woke before 7, though I had nowhere urgent to be, and stood for a while at my bedroom window watching the maple tree in the front yard drop copper leaves onto the lawn. Robert had planted that tree the year Michael started kindergarten. He said every good house needed something that changed with the seasons but stayed rooted. After he passed, I found myself looking at that tree more often, as if it could explain how a person was supposed to keep standing when half of her life had been taken away. I made coffee in the quiet kitchen, measured the grounds the way Robert liked them, then remembered I was the only one drinking it and poured the extra down the sink. On the counter, I had already written my grocery list in blue ink: chuck roast, carrots, green beans, potatoes, dinner rolls, apple cider donuts, vanilla ice cream. Sunday dinner was supposed to be at my house that evening, the first one in almost 3 months. Michael had said he might come by if work did not run late. Brittany had said she would check her schedule. Grace had whispered into the phone, "Please make the donuts, Grandma," and that was all it took for me to plan a meal for 6 when I only had confirmation from a 10-year-old child. I chose my ivory sweater because it was soft and made my silver hair look brighter. I pinned Robert's gold brooch to the left side, the little leaf-shaped one he bought me in Galena on our 40th anniversary. It was not expensive, but he had fastened it onto my coat himself that day and said, "There. Now you look like trouble in pearls." I smiled at the memory, then caught my reflection in the microwave door and saw how quickly the smile faded when no one was there to return it. At 8:30, Brittany called. Her name appeared on my phone with a picture Michael had chosen years ago, back when she still pretended to rest her head on my shoulder in family photos. I answered warmly because old habits do not die just because they embarrass you later. "Good morning, sweetheart." There was a pause, the kind people use when they are deciding how polite they need to sound. "Eleanor, are you still going to Hawthorne Market today?" "Not Mom. Not even Mrs. Whitaker." "Eleanor." "Yes," I said. "I thought I would pick up a few things for dinner." "Perfect. I need to grab some items too. I have a small gathering later, and Michael is slammed with paperwork." "You can ride with me." "You can ride with me." "Not would you like to come?" "Not could we shop together?" A permission disguised as a favor. I looked at my list, then at the empty chair across from me where Robert used to read the newspaper. "Of course," I said. "I would be happy to help." That was another habit. Saying yes before asking whether the yes was deserved. Brittany arrived 20 minutes late in her white sport utility vehicle, the one Michael had leased after she said her old sedan made her look like she had given up on life. I stepped outside with my reusable bags folded under one arm. She did not get out. She tapped the horn lightly, though I was already walking down the path. When I opened the passenger door, the front seat held a garment bag, 2 cardboard boxes, and a pair of sunglasses in a velvet case. "Can you sit in the back?" she asked without looking at me. "I have things up here." I climbed into the back seat beside a stack of return packages. The car smelled like expensive perfume and coffee I had not been offered. As we drove, Brittany talked through her Bluetooth speaker to someone named Vanessa about floral arrangements, charcuterie boards, and how hard it was to find reliable help these days. She never introduced me. She never said, "My mother-in-law is in the car." I sat behind her like luggage with a pulse, watching familiar streets pass by in the late morning light. At Hawthorne Market, She handed me a cart and immediately began placing things into it without asking. French brie. Organic berries. 3 bottles of sparkling cider. White roses. Candles. A cake from the bakery case with gold lettering that said "Welcome Home," though she turned it away before I could read the name underneath. Is this for tonight? I asked. Not exactly, she said. Just something small. She moved ahead of me then, greeting a woman from her yoga class with a bright hug while I stood behind the cart. This is Eleanor, Brittany said when the woman glanced at me. She helps us out sometimes. Helps us out. The words landed softly, almost politely, which made them easier for everyone else to ignore. I told myself not to be sensitive. I told myself younger people spoke differently now. I told myself family did not always have to announce itself loudly to be real. But by the time we reached the checkout lane, I had already begun to understand that I had not been invited along as Michael's mother. I had been brought there to push the cart, carry the bags, and pay the bill without being seen. The insult at the checkout lane did not end when Brittany said it. That is the strange thing about humiliation. A sentence can be spoken in 2 seconds and still keep echoing after the receipt is printed, after the bags are filled, after the automatic doors slide open and the cold air touches your face. Mia tried to place the strawberries on top so they would not bruise. Her hands moved carefully, almost tenderly, as if gentleness toward fruit could make up for what had just happened to the woman standing in front of her. Brittany did not notice. She was too busy checking her phone, smiling at a message that had arrived while my money paid for her gathering. I watched the receipt curl from the machine. $342.19. Underneath the total, in small black letters, was my name. Eleanor R. Whitaker. I had never been so grateful for ink. Do you need help out to the car? Mia asked, but she was looking at me, not Brittany. Before I could answer, Brittany gave another laugh. She can manage. She likes to stay useful. Useful. There it was again, polished and sharpened. I picked up one bag. Then the other. Not because she told me to, but because I wanted my hands occupied. Empty hands can tremble. Full hands have a reason to stay steady. We walked toward the exit in silence. Brittany moved ahead of me, her coat swinging lightly, her phone at her ear now. Yes, I got everything, she said to whoever was on the line. No, do not worry, it is handled. I was beginning to understand how many names a person can be given when others do not want to say who she really is. Maid. Help. Useful. Outside, the parking lot was bright with late morning sun. A man in a Cubs cap returned a cart to the corral and glanced at me with the soft, embarrassed look people give when they have witnessed something private in public. I hated that look. Pity has a way of making your shoulders feel smaller. Brittany opened the back of her sport utility vehicle with a push of her key fob. Put the bags in carefully, she said. The flowers cannot get crushed. I placed the bags inside. One. Then the next. Slow. Exact. The white roses lay across the top like they were being honored for surviving the trip. My apples had rolled to the side. My pot roast sat beneath her imported cheese. I looked at that arrangement and almost laughed. Even in the trunk, the family order was clear. Her wants on top. My giving underneath. Are you coming tonight? I asked. I kept my voice calm. Brittany froze for less than a second, then closed the trunk. Tonight? Dinner, I said. At my house. I bought what Michael likes. She adjusted her sunglasses. Oh. That. Michael has been under so much pressure. I think we may need to keep things flexible. Flexible was one of Brittany's favorite words. It meant plans could bend around her convenience but never around my feelings. I see, I said. She looked at me then, really looked, perhaps trying to measure whether I had understood more than I should. Eleanor, about what I said inside, you know how people joke. Was it a joke? Do not start. Her tone changed so quickly it was almost impressive. The sweetness disappeared, and underneath it was the voice she used when no one important was listening. I just meant you help with things. You always have. There is nothing wrong with that. No, I said. There is nothing wrong with helping. She smiled, relieved too soon. Exactly. But there is something wrong with pretending help is the same as ownership. Her smile thinned. I do not have time for a lecture in a grocery store parking lot. Neither do I. I opened the rear passenger door, then paused. My purse was still on my shoulder. My wallet was inside it. My card was still active. My name was still on that receipt. And for the first time that morning, I felt the smallest clean edge of clarity. Brittany had not just insulted me. She had revealed how safe she felt doing it. That kind of confidence does not grow overnight. It is watered by silence. Mine. Michael's. Everyone's. As we drove back, she talked again through the car speaker, but I no longer tried to follow the conversation. I watched the neighborhoods pass by, the brick houses, the Halloween pumpkins still sitting on porches, the flags lifting slightly in the wind. At a red light, I looked down at my hands in my lap. They were wrinkled, yes. Spotted, yes. Older than Brittany's smooth hands on the steering wheel. But these hands had signed payroll checks. They had held Michael through fevers. They had packed Robert's lunch for 38 years and then held his wedding ring after the funeral home returned it to me in a velvet pouch. They had written checks that kept my son's life comfortable while he forgot to ask whether mine was lonely. Brittany thought those hands were good for carrying bags. She had forgotten they were also capable of closing accounts. When we pulled into my driveway, she did not turn off the engine. Can you bring the perishables inside? I need to run. I stepped out slowly. Which perishables? She blinked. The groceries. The groceries I bought for my dinner, or the groceries I bought for your gathering? For once, she had no immediate answer. I opened the trunk and took only my pot roast, my green beans, my potatoes, and the donuts Grace had asked for. I left the flowers, the cheese, the berries, the candles, and the cake with the hidden name. Brittany stared at me through the rearview mirror. I closed the trunk gently. You can explain those yourself, I said. Then I walked up my front path without looking back. Inside the house, the quiet felt different than it had that morning. It was not peaceful. It was listening. I set the pot roast in the refrigerator, placed the green beans in the vegetable drawer, and left the apple cider donuts on the counter where Grace could see them if she came by. 6 donuts in a white paper bag. A small promise I was no longer sure I would be allowed to keep. Then I stood at the sink and washed my hands longer than necessary, watching the water run over my knuckles, into the lines of my palms, around the gold wedding band I still wore even though Robert had been gone for 4 years. I wanted to feel angry. Anger would have been easier. Anger gives you a task. It points at a person and says, there, that is where the pain belongs. But what I felt first was memory. Not one memory, but dozens of them, rising slowly like receipts from a drawer I had refused to open. Brittany asking me to stay in the kitchen during Grace's 7th birthday because the dining room was too crowded, even though I had baked the cake and arrived early to help set up the balloons. Brittany telling Michael on speakerphone that I was getting fragile because I had asked why my chair at Thanksgiving had been moved to the folding table near the hallway. Brittany taking down the framed photograph of Robert and me from Michael's mantel and replacing it with a white ceramic vase because, as she said, old portraits make a room feel heavy. I remembered Christmas 2 years earlier, when I walked into their house carrying my sweet potato casserole and heard Brittany tell a neighbor, Eleanor is wonderful with food. She is like having family and staff in one person. Everyone laughed. Even Michael smiled, not because he thought it was funny, but because it was easier to smile than to correct his wife. That was the first time I felt something inside me step backward. I had ignored it. I had told myself young couples spoke carelessly. I had told myself not every bruise needed a witness. But the truth was simpler and harder. Brittany had been lowering me 1 inch at a time, and I had been calling it keeping the peace. I dried my hands and walked into the dining room. The table was still unset, the polished wood reflecting the afternoon light. Robert and I had bought that table from an estate sale in Oak Park during our 2nd year of marriage. It had a scratch near one corner from the time Michael tried to carve his initials into it with a butter knife when he was 8. Robert had wanted to scold him. I had wanted to laugh. We compromised by making Michael polish the table every Sunday for a month. That table had held birthday cakes, report cards, unpaid bills, sympathy casseroles, and Robert's hand over mine the night his doctor called with news neither of us wanted to hear. Now Brittany wanted to sit at it when she needed a meal and dismiss me from it when she needed status. I touched the back of Michael's old chair and let myself see him as he had been before ambition, before Brittany, before the careful distance in his voice. He used to run into this room with untied sneakers and ask if dinner was ready. He used to fall asleep on the couch while Robert watched baseball, his head tipped back, his mouth slightly open. He used to call me Mom like the word meant shelter. Lately, he said it like an obligation he was trying to keep brief. Do not take it personally, Mom. Brittany did not mean it that way, Mom. You know how she is, Mom. That last sentence had done more damage than he ever understood. You know how she is. As if a person's cruelty became acceptable once everyone learned to expect it. As if my job was not to be wounded by the knife because the knife had always been sharp. I went to the living room and stood before the bookshelf where Robert kept his old hardcovers. His favorite was a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, its spine cracked, a grocery receipt from 1998 still tucked inside as a bookmark. He had believed in manners with a stubbornness that sometimes made me impatient. Not fancy manners. Not which fork to use or how to fold a napkin. Real manners. The kind that meant you did not make people feel small just because you could. Once, after a dinner party where a wealthy client spoke rudely to a waitress, Robert came home and said, "Money only shows you what a person can buy. Watch how they treat someone who cannot help them climb." I thought of Brittany at Hawthorne Market, telling Mia not to speak to me like I mattered. I thought of the way she had hesitated over my zip code, because she knew enough to use my card but not enough to remember the details of my life. I heard Robert's voice then, not like a ghost, not like some dramatic sign, but like memory doing its work. When someone makes you small in public, Eleanor, do not fight for space. Own the room. He had said that to me after my first catering contract with a law firm, when one of the partners assumed I was there to clear plates instead of present the menu. I had wanted to disappear. Robert told me to stand straighter, introduce myself, and hand them the invoice. I did. They hired me for 9 years. I looked around my living room, at the house Brittany treated like a waiting room for her future inheritance, and felt something settle inside me. Not rage. Not revenge. A boundary. Quiet. Solid. Long overdue. I walked to the small writing desk near the front window and opened the bottom drawer. Beneath a stack of greeting cards, old insurance papers, and Grace's handmade Mother's Day bookmark, there was a cream envelope with Robert's handwriting across the front, "For Eleanor, when you need reminding." I had read it only once after the funeral because grief had made every word feel too heavy to hold. Inside was a letter, and behind it, copies of documents Daniel Harris had prepared years before. The family trust. The lake house deed. The account summaries. The supplemental credit card list. My name appeared again and again, not as decoration, not as courtesy, but as authority. I sat down slowly. Outside, Brittany's sport utility vehicle was gone. Inside, my house was still. I unfolded Robert's letter and read the first line. Eleanor, kindness is yours to give, but never let anyone convince you they are entitled to it. I placed my hand over the page. For the first time all day, I did not feel invisible. I felt named. I read Robert's sentence 3 times before I reached for the phone. Kindness is yours to give, but never let anyone convince you they are entitled to it. The words did not shout. They did not need to. They sat on the page with the calm authority of a man who had known me better than I sometimes knew myself. I picked up my cell phone and scrolled to Daniel Harris, our attorney for more than 25 years. His office was on Washington Street, above a florist and across from a coffee shop where Robert used to buy lemon muffins whenever we had morning appointments. Daniel answered on the 4th ring, his voice careful and warm. Eleanor. Is everything all right? People only ask that gently when they suspect the answer is no. I looked at the documents spread across my desk, the trust, the lake house deed, the list of authorized users attached to my accounts. Brittany's name was not there. Michael's was. That was how she had been using the card. My son had given his wife access to an emergency account I had opened for him after Robert's funeral. Not for flowers. Not for imported cheese. Not for parties I was not invited to. Emergencies. I pressed my fingertips against the edge of the desk until the wood felt solid beneath them. Daniel, I said, I think it is time we reviewed the trust. There was a pause. Not confusion. Recognition. I can see you this afternoon. Today? For Robert's wife, always. I almost smiled at that. Robert's wife. Not the maid. Not the help. Not someone who liked to feel included. A wife. A mother. A woman with a name and legal standing. I changed out of my ivory sweater because it smelled faintly of grocery store bakery air and Brittany's perfume from the car. I put on a navy dress, low heels, and the pearl earrings Grace once told me made me look like the queen of something. Before I left, I placed the apple cider donuts in a tin and wrote Grace's name on a sticky note. Some promises still deserved protection, even when the adults around them had failed. Daniel's office looked the same. As it always had, dark shelves, framed degrees, a brass lamp, and a bowl of butterscotch candies near the receptionist's window. His assistant, Patricia, stood when I walked in. She had known me since Michael was in high school. Mrs. Whitaker, she said. Daniel is ready for you. Again, my name. It was astonishing how much repair 2 ordinary words could begin when the right person spoke them with respect. Daniel rose from behind his desk when I entered. He was in his early 60s now, with silver at his temples and reading glasses hanging from a cord around his neck. He did not ask me to explain myself immediately. He poured me water, set a yellow legal pad in front of him, and waited. That was one of the reasons Robert trusted him. Daniel understood that some stories needed a quiet room before they could become sentences. I told him everything. Not dramatically. Not with tears. I told him about Hawthorne Market, about Mia at the register, about Brittany's words, about the card, about the $342.19. I told him about the cake with the hidden name, the flowers, the small gathering that did not include me, the way Brittany had called me useful as if usefulness were the only rent I paid to stay in my own family. Daniel listened without interrupting. Only once did his expression change, when I explained that Michael had allowed Brittany to use the emergency card. He wrote something down, slowly. Eleanor, he said at last. Robert anticipated certain possibilities. I looked at him. He anticipated my daughter-in-law calling me a maid in public? Daniel's mouth tightened, not quite a smile. Not the details. The pattern. He opened a folder and turned it toward me. Robert was very clear when we updated the family trust. You retain full control of the Lake Geneva property during your lifetime. Michael has no ownership interest unless you grant it in writing. He also has no right to pledge, refinance, lease, or represent the property as his. The word represent landed harder than I expected. There is something happening there this weekend, I said. Brittany bought flowers and a cake. She said it was small. Daniel removed his glasses. Did she mention the lake house? No, but suddenly I remembered the cake in the trunk. Welcome home. The gold lettering turned away from me. The candles. The imported cheese. The white roses. Brittany did not buy $300 of groceries to sit in her kitchen and admire them. Daniel leaned back. Eleanor, I received a call from a title company yesterday asking whether the Whitaker Lake property had any pending authorization for valuation documents. They said Michael's wife had requested preliminary information for a private lender. The room became very still. Not empty. Still. There is a difference. Empty is when you do not know what is missing. Still is when every piece finally stops moving long enough for you to see the picture. She is trying to use my house, I said. It appears someone may be exploring that, Daniel answered carefully. Lawyers speak in clean lines, but the truth sat between them. Brittany had not only made me carry bags. She had been carrying my name into rooms where money changed hands. I folded my hands in my lap. They did not tremble this time. What can I do today? Daniel slid another page toward me. First, revoke Michael's access to the emergency card. Second, send formal notice that no one may use or represent the lake house without your written permission. Third, update the trust provisions regarding distributions, reimbursements, and conditional family support. Robert gave you more authority than you have ever used. I looked down at Robert's signature on the old document. Strong. Familiar. Final. For years, I had treated that authority like a locked cabinet I was too polite to open. Brittany had mistaken that politeness for weakness. Michael had mistaken it for endless forgiveness. I picked up Daniel's pen. Then I suppose it is time I use it. Daniel nodded once. I will prepare the paperwork. I signed the card revocation first. My name flowed across the page in blue ink, steady and clear. Then the notice for the lake house. Then the instruction to review every family account connected to Michael. Each signature felt less like punishment and more like returning furniture to the proper room. When I finished, Daniel gathered the papers and placed them in a folder. Do you want me to contact Michael? He asked. I thought about my son's face, the boy who used to fall asleep under Robert's old quilt, the man who now let his wife spend my money while shrinking my place at the table. Not yet, I said. He should hear it from me. On my way home, I stopped at a small stationery store and bought a box of cream envelopes. At the register, the clerk called me ma'am, and I almost laughed from the simple mercy of being addressed without insult. Back in my car, I sat for a moment before starting the engine. My phone buzzed. A text from Brittany. We may not make dinner tonight. Too much going on. I looked at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I typed back only 4 words. I understand completely now. I placed the phone in my purse, started the car, and drove home beneath a gray Illinois sky that finally looked honest. By 6 o'clock that evening, the pot roast had filled my kitchen with the kind of smell that used to bring Michael downstairs before I called his name. I still cooked it the way he liked it, with carrots tucked around the edges, potatoes soft enough to break with a fork, and a little extra rosemary because Robert always said rosemary made an ordinary dinner feel like Sunday. The table was set for 4, not 6. I had put Grace's place between mine and Michael's, the way she preferred, because she liked to whisper questions to me during adult conversations. I placed the apple cider donuts on a white plate near the sideboard. Then I stood in the doorway and looked at the room as if it belonged to someone else. Everything was ready. That was the part that hurt. Not the waiting. I had waited before. Mothers wait in hospitals, in school parking lots, by phones, beside windows. Waiting becomes part of the body after a while. What hurt was the preparation. The napkins folded. The water glasses filled. The butter softened in a little dish Robert's sister had given us in 1986. Love had labor in it. Brittany understood that well enough to use it, but not well enough to honor it. At 6:15, Michael arrived alone. I saw his headlights sweep across the front window and felt my heart lift before I could stop it. He came in wearing his charcoal work coat, his tie loosened, his phone in one hand. For a second, he looked like his father around the eyes, tired and gentle. Then he glanced at the table and said, "Brittany is running late." Not "Hello, Mom." Not "Something smells good." "Brittany is running late." "Grace?" I asked. "With Brittany. They will come if they can." "If they can." I took his coat and hung it in the hall closet because I did not yet know how to stop mothering on command. "Dinner is ready." He sat at the table and rubbed his forehead. "It has been a long day." I wanted to ask whether his long day included giving his wife permission to use my card. I wanted to ask whether he knew about the title company. Instead, I carried the roast to the table and served him a slice the way I had served him since he was old enough to chew. He ate 3 bites before he looked up. Brittany said there was some awkwardness at the store. Awkwardness. Another soft word laid over a hard thing. I set my fork down. Is that what she called it? Mom. He sighed, and there it was, the tone I had come to know too well. Not anger. Not concern. Exhaustion at the inconvenience of my feelings. She said you took something the wrong way. Which part did I take the wrong way? He looked uncomfortable. I was not there. No, I said. You were not. The room seemed to hold its breath. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the faint tick of the wall clock, the neighbor's dog barking once and then stopping. Michael reached for his water glass. Brittany can be blunt. You know how she is. I looked at my son across the table where he had once done algebra homework and begged for one more biscuit. Do you know how I am? He frowned. What does that mean? It means everyone keeps asking me to understand Brittany. I wonder when someone will ask Brittany to understand me. He looked down at his plate. That was his answer before he spoke. Silence first. Cowardice dressed as peacekeeping. Then his phone buzzed. He checked it immediately. She is here, he said, pushing back his chair. A minute later, Brittany walked in with Grace beside her. Grace ran to me and wrapped her arms around my waist. Grandma, it smells amazing. I closed my eyes for half a second. There are moments that keep you from hardening completely. Grace was one of mine. Brittany followed slowly, holding a bouquet of grocery store flowers she had clearly taken from the ones I had left in her trunk. Eleanor, she said, with that careful sweetness people use when they know they have gone too far but still hope manners will erase evidence. I brought these. I recognize them. Her smile flickered. Michael shot me a look. Please do not start, it said. I had seen that look at holidays, birthdays, school events, and once at Robert's memorial luncheon when Brittany complained the slideshow made the room feel depressing. Please do not start. As if I were the weather threatening their picnic. We sat down. Grace talked about her science project, a model of the water cycle made from cotton balls and blue construction paper. I listened closely, grateful for every innocent word. Brittany barely touched her food. She watched me instead, waiting for the version of Eleanor who swallowed discomfort to return. After Grace finished her story, Brittany placed her napkin beside her plate. About this morning, she began. I do think there was a misunderstanding. I turned to her. Good. Then explain it. Michael shifted in his chair. Mom. No, I said quietly. Let her explain. I want to understand which part one misunderstood. The part where I was old, or the part where I was not family? Grace went still. Brittany's face changed, not with shame, but irritation at being quoted accurately. I was stressed. The clerk was asking unnecessary questions. I made a bad joke. A joke is when both people are allowed to laugh. She leaned back. You are making this very dramatic. There it was. The final shelter of people who hurt you in public and want privacy for the consequences. Dramatic. Sensitive. Confused. I folded my napkin and placed it on the table. Michael, did you give Brittany permission to use the emergency card? His fork stopped halfway to his plate. Brittany looked at him quickly. Too quickly. Michael cleared his throat. It was just for convenience. Emergency convenience? Mom, it is not a big deal. I was going to pay you back. For how long? He said nothing. I looked at Brittany. And the lake house? This time she could not hide the change in her face. It was small, but I saw it. The eyes first. Then the mouth. Then the hands tightening in her lap. What about the lake house? She asked. Michael turned toward her. Brittany? I reached into the sideboard drawer and took out the cream envelope Daniel had prepared. I did not open it. Not yet. I simply placed it beside my dinner plate, between the butter dish and Robert's empty chair. Daniel Harris called me today, I said. No one will be using my property, my accounts, or my name without my written permission anymore. Brittany's voice sharpened. Your property? Grace looked from her mother to me, confused. I kept my voice gentle for her sake. Yes. My property. Michael rubbed his face with both hands. Mom, can we please not do this at dinner? I looked at the roast, the green beans, the potatoes, the donuts waiting for a child who had done nothing wrong. Then I looked at my son. That is the difference between us, Michael. I prepared dinner. Your wife prepared documents. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of everything we had avoided saying for years. I pushed the envelope toward him. After Grace has dessert, we will talk. Then I turned to my granddaughter and softened my voice. Sweetheart, would you like your donut warmed for 10 seconds or 15? Grace whispered, 15. I stood, carried her plate to the kitchen, and for the first time in years, I did not wait for permission to decide what happened in my own house. After Grace finished her donut, I walked her to the living room and turned on the old animated movie she always liked when she was younger. She was 10 now and beginning to pretend she was too grown for such things, but that night she curled into the corner of the sofa with Robert's quilt over her knees and let the familiar music fill the room. I gave her a mug of warm apple cider and kissed the top of her head. The grown-ups need to talk for a few minutes, I said. Grace looked up at me with eyes too observant for her age. Is Mom in trouble? I smoothed a strand of hair behind her ear. Your mother and father need to answer some questions. That is all. I did not want to poison a child against her parents. Children discover adult weakness soon enough without someone handing it to them early. When I returned to the dining room, Michael was standing by the window with his hands in his pockets, and Brittany was sitting very straight in her chair, arms folded, chin lifted. She had chosen offense as her defense. I had seen that posture before, at teacher conferences, charity brunches, Christmas dinners, every place where she wanted to look wronged before anyone could prove she had done wrong. The envelope from Daniel Harris lay on the table between us. I sat down and opened it slowly. This is formal notice, I said, that no one may use, represent, refinance, lease, host events at, or claim interest in the Lake Geneva property without my written permission. Brittany laughed once. That is ridiculous. It is a family property. It is my property. Robert meant it for the family. Robert put it in my name. Michael turned from the window. Mom, nobody is trying to take anything from you. That sentence might have worked on me a year earlier. Maybe even 6 months earlier. But not after Hawthorne Market. Not after the title company. Not after watching Brittany's face change when I said lake house. I removed the next page from the envelope and placed it flat on the table. Daniel received a call from a title company yesterday. Someone requested preliminary valuation information connected to the lake house. Michael's confusion looked real. Brittany's stillness did not. Brittany, he asked. Her eyes moved to him, then back to me. I was only exploring options. For what? I asked. For the future, she said. For our family. You mean for a private lender? Her face tightened. Michael stepped closer to the table. What lender? Brittany's voice became brisk, almost businesslike. Michael, do not overreact. I told you we needed liquidity for the renovation and the consulting buy-in. I was trying to be proactive. Using my mother's house? Your family's house. My mother's house, he said, softer this time. I watched those words reach him. Not all the way, but enough. Enough for his shoulders to lower and his eyes to avoid mine. Brittany turned to me. Eleanor, you are making this sound sinister. We host people there all the time. You barely use it. There it was again, the logic of taking. If I did not use something enough, it became available. If I did not speak loudly enough, I had agreed. If I loved them, the answer was yes before they asked. I folded my hands over Robert's letter. I barely use the china in the cabinet. That does not make it yours. I barely wear my wedding pearls. That does not make them yours. I barely open Robert's toolbox in the garage, but no one would mistake it for abandoned. Brittany looked toward Michael for help. He did not give it quickly enough, and panic flashed through her perfect expression. Fine, she said. Maybe I should have mentioned it. But we were going to include you. Were you? I asked. Is that why the cake in your trunk said welcome home? Michael looked up sharply. What cake? Brittany's mouth opened, then closed. I continued, not raising my voice. Is that why the flowers, candles, and groceries were bought with my emergency card? Is that why I was not told about the gathering? Is that why I was introduced at the store as someone who helps out? Michael's face had gone pale in the soft dining room light. Brittany, what was happening this weekend? She pushed back her chair. A small event. That is all. Some people from the investment group wanted to see the property. It would have helped us. It would have helped Grace. Grace. People like Brittany always reached for the innocent when their own reasons became too ugly to hold. Do not use my granddaughter as wrapping paper, I said. The words came out so calm that even I was surprised by them. Brittany stared at me. Michael sat down slowly, as if his knees had lost confidence. Mom, he said, I did not know about the lender. I believed him. That was not the comfort it should have been. Not knowing meant he had handed his household to someone else and stopped checking what she carried out of it. I slid the first document toward him. Your access to the emergency card has been revoked. His eyes closed briefly. Brittany spoke first. That is humiliating. I looked at her. No. Humiliating is standing in a grocery store while your daughter-in-law tells a clerk not to speak to you like you are family. The room went completely quiet. Even the movie in the living room seemed softer now. Michael looked at Brittany, and for the first time that evening, he did not look tired. He looked awake. She shook her head. I said something careless. You said something true, I replied. Not true about me. True about you. I gathered the papers and placed them back inside the envelope, leaving one copy on the table for Michael. Daniel will send formal notices tomorrow morning. The lake house will not be available this weekend. Any guests, lenders, agents, or acquaintances who arrive there will be informed that the event was never authorized. Brittany's face drained of color. You cannot do that to us. I stood. I am not doing anything to you. I am simply no longer letting you do things through me. Michael whispered my name, but I did not turn soft just because he sounded wounded. I had spent years confusing his discomfort with my responsibility. You and Grace may stay for the movie, I said. Brittany, I think it is time for you to go home. Her eyes widened. No one had dismissed her in my house before. That was probably why the sentence felt so clean. Michael looked between us. Mom, maybe we should all take a breath. I looked at him then, my son, my only child, the boy I had loved before he had a name. Michael, I have been taking a breath for 3 years. Tonight, I am finally speaking on the exhale. Brittany grabbed her coat from the back of the chair. In the hallway, she paused as if expecting me to follow, to soften, to apologize for embarrassing her with the truth. I did not move. The front door closed quietly behind her. No slam. No scene. Just a soft click that sounded, to me, like a lock finally turning in the right direction. The house felt larger after Brittany left, but not emptier. That surprised me. For years, I had mistaken noise for family and tension for closeness. I had believed a full room meant I was loved, even when I was the one cooking, serving, apologizing, and pretending not to notice who looked away when I spoke. But that night, with Brittany gone and Grace asleep under Robert's quilt, the quiet had weight without cruelty. Michael stayed in the dining room long after the plates were cleared. He did not touch the copy of Daniel's notice at first. He stared at it the way people stare at a hospital bill or a bad report card, hoping the words might rearrange themselves into something kinder. I washed the dishes by hand even though the dishwasher worked perfectly. Warm water. Soap bubbles. One plate at a time. There is a kind of mercy in simple tasks when the complicated ones are waiting behind you. Michael came into the kitchen while I was drying the roasting pan. Mom, he said. I did not turn right away. Did you know? My voice was quiet. About the lender. About the lake house. About the card. He leaned against the counter, older than he had looked that morning. I knew Brittany wanted to host people there. I thought it was networking. I did not know she called anyone about using it for financing. But you gave her the card. He looked down. I gave her access to my wallet app. I did not think she would use it that much. You did not think, I said. Not sharp. Just true. He flinched anyway. I am sorry. I set the pan on the towel and looked at him. Sorry can be a clean word or a dirty one, depending on what a person expects it to wash away. Michael's face was tired, frightened, and ashamed, but shame is not the same as change. What are you sorry for? I asked. He opened his mouth, then stopped. That pause told me more than an immediate answer would have. He was searching for the version of sorry that would end the conversation. I needed the one that would begin it. I am sorry she said that to you, he finally said. I nodded once. That is a start. His eyes reddened. Mom, I did not want things to get this bad. Things do not get bad by themselves, Michael. People carry them. There. One choice at a time. In the living room, Grace shifted in her sleep. The movie had ended, and the screen was glowing blue. Michael looked toward her, and something in his expression softened. She heard some of it. Yes, I said. Children hear more than adults admit. He rubbed both hands over his face. What am I supposed to tell her? The truth in a way a child can carry. Tell her grandma deserves respect. Tell her adults made mistakes. Tell her money and houses do not matter more than people. He gave a small, broken laugh. You make it sound simple. It is simple. That does not mean it is easy. The next morning, Daniel sent the notices. By 10 o'clock, the lake house event had collapsed without a raised voice from me. The title company confirmed no authorization existed. The private lender withdrew interest. The guests Brittany had invited began receiving awkward cancellation messages she had to write herself. I knew because my phone started buzzing before lunch. First Michael. Then Brittany. Then numbers I did not recognize. I let them go to voicemail. At 78 seconds past noon, Clara Bennett from Hawthorne Market called. For a moment, I thought perhaps I had left something at the store. Instead, she said, "Mrs. Whitaker, I hope I am not overstepping, but Mia told me what happened yesterday. I wanted to apologize on behalf of the store." I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea cooling between my hands. "You have nothing to apologize for, Clara." "Still," she said. "You have supported our food pantry drives for years. People in this town know who you are." I looked at the maple tree outside the window. A few leaves clung stubbornly to the branches. Apparently not everyone. Clara was quiet for a moment. Then maybe they need reminding. 2 days later, I attended the charity luncheon at the Naperville Community Center because I had promised Clara months earlier that I would help present the Thanksgiving meal program. I almost stayed home. Not because I was afraid of Brittany, but because public rooms felt different after you had been reduced in one. Still, I put on my navy dress, Robert's brooch, and the pearl earrings Grace loved. When I walked in, people greeted me warmly. "Mrs. Whitaker. Eleanor. Good to see you. Thank you for coming." Each greeting felt like a chair being pulled back to the table where I belonged. Brittany was there. Of course she was. She stood near the coffee station in a cream blazer, smiling too brightly at two women from the investment group. When she saw me, her face did something complicated, alarm first, then calculation, then sweetness. She crossed the room. "Eleanor," she said, loud enough for others to hear. "I am so glad you came." I looked at her outstretched hands and did not take them. Not rudely. Just clearly. "Brittany." Her smile tightened. "I hope we can move past this little misunderstanding." Around us, conversations softened. Clara stood near the podium, watching. Mia was by the registration table, pretending to arrange name tags. I thought of the grocery store, of the word maid, of the way my name had appeared on that receipt like evidence. It was not little, I said. And it was not a misunderstanding. Brittany's cheeks colored. "This is not the place." I almost smiled. People who embarrass you in public always become experts on privacy when the truth arrives. Clara tapped the microphone then and invited me forward. My heels sounded steady against the floor. I did not mention Brittany's name. I did not mention the card, the cake, the lender, or the lake house. I spoke about the food pantry, about older neighbors choosing between groceries and heating bills, about the quiet dignity of people who work hard and ask for little. Then I paused and looked out over the room. "There is something I have learned at 68, I said. A person does not become invisible because someone younger finds her inconvenient. A woman who carried a family for 40 years does not become less worthy because someone else wants her chair. And kindness, when mistaken for weakness, has every right to become a boundary." No one clapped immediately. That was how I knew they had heard me. Then Clara began, and the room followed. Not thunderous. Not theatrical. Respectful. Brittany stood near the coffee station, pale and perfectly still. I stepped away from the podium without looking at her for permission to feel proud. For the first time in years, I had not defended my place in the family. I had simply occupied it. After the luncheon, people came up to me in gentle waves. Clara squeezed my hand. Mia told me her grandmother would have liked what I said. A retired teacher named Mrs. Dunleavy asked if I would help organize the Christmas pantry drive, and for the first time in a long while, I said yes without feeling like yes meant surrender. Brittany did not approach me again. She left before dessert was served, her cream blazer moving quickly through the community center doors, her phone pressed to her ear. I did not follow. I had spent too many years following the mood of a woman who never once turned around to see if I was tired. That evening, Michael came to my house alone. He did not use his key, though he still had one. He rang the bell and waited on the porch like a guest who understood he had not earned his way back inside yet. I opened the door and looked at him through the screen. He held no flowers, no envelope, no peace offering bought in panic. Just himself, pale and worn, with his coat collar turned up against the cold. "May I come in, Mom?" he asked. It was the first time in months that the word mom sounded less like a habit and more like a request. I let him in. We sat in the living room, not the dining room. Some rooms need rest after hard conversations. He looked at Robert's chair, then at the quilt folded over the arm. "Brittany is furious," he said. I waited. He swallowed. "And embarrassed." I waited again. He looked at me then. "I know that is not the point." "No," I said. "It is not." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped like a boy about to confess to a broken window. I have been telling myself I was keeping peace. I thought if I did not challenge every comment, every little thing, it would all settle down eventually. But I think I was really just asking you to absorb what I did not want to face. There are apologies that arrive dressed beautifully and carry nothing. This one arrived tired, but it carried weight. I felt it. I did not rush to comfort him. A mother's love can become a hiding place for a grown son if she is not careful. "You let her make me smaller," I said. His eyes filled. "I know. You let her use what your father and I built." "I know. And when I hurt, you treated my pain like an inconvenience." He closed his eyes. "I know. Those 2 words did not fix anything. But they opened a door truth could walk through." He told me he had moved into the guest room at home for the time being, not as a dramatic gesture, but because he needed space to think clearly. He said he had spoken to Daniel and would cooperate with removing his access from the accounts. He said he had told Brittany the lake house was not theirs to use, mention, borrow against, or display. I watched him carefully as he spoke. He was not a boy anymore. He was a man who had allowed comfort to make him careless, and carelessness had cost him his mother's trust. "I am not asking you to choose between your wife and me," I said. "I am asking you to choose honesty, even when it makes your house uncomfortable." He nodded. "I understand." I was not sure he fully did, but understanding sometimes begins as a seed, not a tree. A week later, Daniel finalized the changes. The emergency card remained closed. The lake house was removed from every informal family conversation and placed behind written permission, where it should have been all along. I updated the trust so that Grace's education fund was protected separately, untouched by adult pride, adult debt, or adult performance. Grace was a child. She had not called me invisible. She had not treated love like a line of credit. I sold a small investment Robert and I had kept for someday and donated part of it to the food pantry in his name. Someday, I realized, does not always mean a trip or a new kitchen. Sometimes someday means becoming the woman your younger self needed to meet. Brittany sent one message. It was long, polished, and full of sentences that sounded like apologies until you looked closely and saw they were only explanations wearing perfume. I did not answer. Not every door needs to be slammed. Some simply remain closed. On the first Friday of December, I went back to Hawthorne Market alone. The air smelled like pine wreaths and bakery sugar. I wore my navy coat, Robert's brooch, and a red scarf Grace had picked out for me online with Michael's help. I bought coffee, oranges, chicken broth, and one small bag of apple cider donuts even though they were out of season and not as good as the fall ones. At the checkout lane, Mia looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitaker." My hand stilled on the cart handle. Such ordinary words. Such enormous repair. "Good morning, Mia," I said. She bagged my groceries carefully, placing the oranges on the bottom and the donuts on top. When the total appeared, I paid with my own card. My own hand. My own name. Outside, the parking lot was bright with winter sun, and the maple trees along the street were bare but standing. I carried my bags to the car myself, not because anyone expected it, but because I could. Before starting the engine, I sat for a moment and looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Silver hair. Pearl earrings. Lines around my eyes. A woman who had been mistaken for weak because she was generous. A woman who had been called to help by someone helping herself. Brittany once told a stranger not to speak to me like I mattered. The funny thing is, after that day, everyone finally did. More importantly, I did.